silent scan.
Underground grid connected. Please insert your passkey. Passkey accepted. Downloading payload. Marked. Part 1. My worst fear was coming true. I didn't need him to say a word. I knew it in the frown lines at the corners of his eyes, the way he rubbed the stubble on his jaw as he stared down at the test results in his hand. I knew that look. I'd seen it before. It was the look of Jefferson Harrington's face right before he delivered devastating news to a patient or their family. And now, that look was directed at me. "It's a boy," he said, the words slipping out in something like a sigh. They were so soft I could barely hear them over the roar building in my ears. I should be ecstatic. Grayson and I had always wanted a big family. The birth of our first child, Firelin, was a difficult one. After 5 hours of labor, emergency surgery, and almost bleeding out on the table, we had resigned ourselves to the idea that having another child was impossible. It hadn't come as a surprise. The bio-warfare of long ago left crippling long-term side effects. Those of us left who were still able to conceive could rarely have multiple children or live through the birth of them. But somehow, life had found a way. I should be ecstatic, but all I could feel was a growing sense of dread and a building sort of anger. I should be ecstatic, overjoyed. But Global Genesis had stolen that from me, and I hated it. And worse, I feared my joy might not be the only thing they'd take. Jefferson gingerly took a seat, his face suddenly very tired. I knew there was more because he couldn't seem to meet my eyes. Suddenly, the large private office felt very, very small. I swallowed hard, trying to free my throat of the lump that had lodged there. "He has the genetic markers, doesn't he?" My words were slow to leave my lips, and strained in a way that drew my attention to the tightness in my chest. It wasn't just the shock of the realization, it was saying the words out loud. Having the markers was always a possibility for us, especially being that it ran in the family. Grayson's brother had been a marked one. The signs developed around his 3rd birthday. Model citizens that Grayson's parents were, the appearance of the markers were not only immediately reported, but celebrated in a way only a high-ranking monitor informant like his father could afford. The following morning, officials appeared to take the boy. They carted him off to a compound that he would never leave. Grayson never saw his brother Frank again. Blissfully unaware of what they had done, Grayson's parents threw a party. It was extravagant. Legendary even. Titus, Grayson's father, used the event to repair their family name, which had been stained the generation before when Titus turned in his own brother for degenerate sympathizing. That betrayal earned him favor, but it hadn't erased the shame until Frank was marked. Then they had a son blessed by Noah Claverian himself, or so Mabel, Grayson's mother, loved to boast. Soon enough, their family status soared. The moment Grayson turned of age, he put in a work transfer and left. To my knowledge, he never spoke to any of them again. Even though we had taken all necessary precautions before running the tests, speaking it out loud filled me with unease. Our home was certainly tapped, monitored regularly. But Jefferson's was a fortified safe house, part of the underground grid network. Still, saying it plainly felt dangerous. We all had made a habit of speaking mostly in code when something this important needed to be communicated. If anyone heard what I just said, we would be detained just for having run the test outside the hospital. I took a breath in an attempt to quell the sudden rising panic. A terrible thought brimmed to the surface. Maybe he'd be better off dead. Maybe we all would be better off if he was. My mind seemed to recoil from the idea and my stomach soured. How could I think that? But it wasn't the thought that disturbed me most. It was the quiet ring of truth within it. Indeed, to die here, right now, may be a mercy and a kindness. Although global Genesis treats the marked ones like precious blessings to be coveted in the public eye, there are those of us who know the truth. Those children, blessed with high intelligence, resistance to illness, and, once matured, the ability to counteract biowarfare-induced infertility, are exploited. Their DNA makes them a hot commodity purchasable at the right price, and on the black market where atrocities require less public finesse, they are priceless. There were rumors circulating the underground grid. Rumors of child prisoners used for experiments, of unmarked graves behind research facilities, of corrupt monitor informants trading marked ones to black market smugglers, and worst of all, children being exploited as a means to quell the infertility rates in wealthy areas of the provinces. Yes, indeed, dying now may be a mercy for both of us, because parents will go through extraordinary lengths to protect their children, even if it costs them everything. Only a few thousand children per generation were born with these markers. I wanted to believe I was wrong, that I had misread Jefferson's face, but deep down, I knew I hadn't. No, I knew the truth, and somehow, I knew the decision I made would shape the world, whether in some grand sweeping way or in a small invisible ripple. That realization was met with a final feeling of determination. My free hand instinctively slid over the spot in my belly where the boy now grew, hovering there as if my hand could somehow shield him from the harsh realities of the world. The grip in my other hand must have tightened around Grayson's, because he placed his free one over mine, the warmth of his palm seeping into my icy skin. It was only under the weight of his other palm that I realized my hands were shaking. Grayson's eyes were fixed on my other hand, at my belly beneath it that would soon swell. His gray-blue eyes hardened, and an anger simmered there that I had never seen before. No, not anger, hatred. A muscle in his jaw feathered before his gaze flickered back to Jefferson, who was still sitting very still. He appeared to be staring into the flames of the fireplace. The reflection flickering off the reading glasses sitting on the edge of his nose, the way his pondering thoughts seemed to flicker behind his green eyes. Suddenly, he squeezed them shut, rubbing at his temples on the spot I usually got headaches. He let loose a quiet sigh, which was answer enough. His frown furrowed, and his fingers continued to work, as if he expected to massage a solution into his brain. "They'll take him," I whispered. "That won't happen," Grayson said sharply. "We won't let it." I blinked at my husband. I knew as well as he did that Grayson wasn't exactly a model citizen by global Genesis standard. No, my husband hadn't taken after his monitor informant father, but his degenerate sympathizing uncle. If his father was still in his life, Titus would have reported Grayson years ago, just for entertaining half the ideas we'd spoken aloud. But Grayson wasn't just thinking them now. He was speaking them, boldly, defiantly. That wasn't like him. He'd always been a man of quiet actions, not words. I stared at him, heart swelling with a love so fierce it hurt. And then the image of a flower appeared in my mind. My father was an engineer. When his work requested he transfer several towns over, it had taken us the better part of a year to get our visas approved. Even with my father's high work merits, the process had been tedious, since he was the only one who was moving by request. The transition had been tough. No longer approved to work in our current town, but unable to move to start work in the new one. Money had been tight. But my father still refused to go on ahead for fear we would never be reunited if mine and my mother's visas were rejected. Upon arrival, we were so broke we slept on blankets on the rough wooden floors. Having just completed school, I'd resorted to taking up any work I could get to help support my parents. Often I did little odd jobs until one day Terrence Mercer hired me to help him with the laundry. He had apologized to me profusely for the dark stains on his clothes, the signature of a man who spent long hours in the mines. His wife was bedridden, unable to cope with the miscarriage she had just weeks before. The first time I saw him was through the crack of the half-open door. Grayson was sitting by Jeannie Mercer's bed, talking with her in a hushed voice. Though we had made eye contact for only a second, something had passed between us, something rare. The next time I visited, Terrence Mercer told me Grayson wanted me to stop by and gave me a slip of paper with his address. Grayson was a trolley conductor in charge of shipping things in and out of town. Though his home was kept up, he was rarely there. He hired me to house sit, occasionally giving me odd and end things to do, always leaving more money than was fair for the amount of work completed, and refusing to let me accept any less. Every other day, Grayson would return, and on those days I began to find a single flower sitting on the countertop. He never said anything about them, and it wasn't until I had a rotating bouquet that I began to realize the flowers were for me. Soon, I began to look forward to them, the surprise of the color, the scent. A month passed before I finally worked up the nerve to ask him about the flowers. He stared at me, unblinking, then slid his pack from his shoulder. "Come with me," he said softly. We walked out to the small building in the backyard. When he opened the door, I gasped. This is Blake C. Holloway. We hope you have enjoyed this production of Marked, Part 1 by Blake C. Holloway. This program was produced and directed by B. Holla Entertainment. Text copyright 2025 by Blake C. Holloway. Production copyright 2025 by B. Holla Entertainment. All rights reserved. This is a copyrighted work. Unauthorized copying or distribution is a crime. Transmission terminated.